The arena was massive, a ring of black stone surrounded by roaring fire pits. Thousands of Drakari nobles, warriors, and even civilians had gathered in the stands above. Their voices were deep, echoing, almost like thunder. In the center of the arena stood Captain Aisha Morgan, wearing simple armor given to her by the palace. It was too big, too heavy, made for Drakari, not humans. But she stood tall. Across from her, the massive gate began to rise with a deep growl. From the shadows stepped her opponent. He was 3 meters tall, scales like obsidian, arms like tree trunks, twin axes in his claws. Vornak the Breaker, a champion of the Drakari arenas. The crowd cheered his name like a war chant. But Aisha didn't blink. She wasn't here to win. She was here to prove one thing. Humans don't break easy. High above, Supreme Warlord Vraxis watched from his throne. Around him sat the council. Lord Karzan leaned closer to Vraxis. She'll be dead in minutes. Vraxis didn't look away. If she dies, it means humans are weak. But if she survives, and maybe they are what we need. A massive gong echoed through the arena. The fight had begun. Vornak didn't waste time. He rushed forward like a storm, axes swinging. Aisha rolled under the first strike. Dust exploded where the blade hit. She moved fast, ducking behind a fallen stone pillar. She had no weapon except a short blade, and her mind. She watched Vornak. He was strong but slow, and angry. "Come on, monster," she whispered. "Chase me." She ran across the sand, dodging his swings, never staying in one place. The crowd started to boo. They didn't want a runner. They wanted blood. But she wasn't trying to impress them. She was trying to survive. Minutes passed. Vornak's attacks grew wild, his breathing heavy, his strikes slower. Aisha waited behind a broken column. When he charged again, she jumped to the side. His axe struck the stone and got stuck. She moved fast, slashing behind his knee. He roared and fell to one knee. The crowd gasped. She jumped on his back and drove her blade toward his neck, but he spun, throwing her across the arena. She hit the sand hard. Her side burned with pain. Vornak stood again, blood dripping. His eyes glowed with hate. "You die. Slow," he growled. Aisha crawled behind another stone. She was dizzy. Blood ran down her forehead. She looked at her blade. Broken. "Think, Aisha. Think fast." She grabbed a sharp piece of stone from the ground. When Vornak charged again, she didn't run. She ran toward him. Just before he swung, she slid low, between his legs, and stabbed the stone shard into the back of his leg. He howled, in rage, and turned to strike, but he was too slow. She leapt onto his back again and slammed her broken blade into the side of his neck, right between two scales. This time he collapsed, still breathing, but unmoving. Silence. Then, thunder. The crowd roared louder than before. She had not killed him, but she had defeated him. She stood in the center of the arena, bloody and shaking, but alive. High above, Vraxis rose from his throne. She has passed the trial of wills. Cheers echoed around the arena. Later, in the palace infirmary, Aisha lay on a stone bed. Her side was bandaged. One arm was bruised, but she was smiling. She had survived. The door opened. Supreme Warlord Vraxis entered, alone. "You fight like a flame in a storm," he said. "Unexpected. Bright. Dangerous." Aisha sat up. "You wanted to see if a human could survive." "I did." He nodded. "Yes, but not all on the council are pleased." He tossed a crystal shard onto the table beside her. She picked it up. It showed a hidden recording. Karzan speaking with a cloaked figure. "The human must die before the next vote. I don't care how. Use the poison again. Or fire. Just do it." Aisha looked up. "You believe me now?" Vraxis growled. "Karzan has dishonored our law. He will face judgment, but not yet. Many support him. If I move now, we have civil war." Aisha frowned. "So what's the plan?" He looked her in the eye. "We make a new plan. one with fire and shadows. That night, in the shadows of the palace, Tirak met her in secret. "Heard what happened," he whispered. You beat Vornak." Aisha smiled weakly. "Barely, but yes." Tirak looked around. "Something is happening. The Red Scale, they're moving weapons into the city quietly, for something big." Aisha's face grew serious. "A coup?" Tirak nodded. "Maybe. I think they plan to strike during the council's next vote." She stood slowly. Her wound still hurt, but her mind was sharp. "They want to burn peace before it begins." Tirak whispered. "What will you do?" She looked out the window at the glowing lava fields. "We stopped them. From the inside." In the shadows, Lord Curzon met with 4 cloaked nobles. "She won the crowd," one hissed. "For now," Curzon replied. "But tomorrow she will not leave this palace alive." He raised a hand. "And neither will the warlord." Space was never quiet. It whispered with radio signals, ship engines, and background noise from stars. But that day, something different came through the black. A strange signal reached Earth's deep space listening post near Pluto. The signal was not random. It was clear, direct, and chilling. It said, "To the leaders of the Terran Republic, the Drakari Dominion invites one human diplomat to our throne world. For peace." The room fell silent. Every scientist, soldier, and officer stared at the screen. "No one spoke for a full minute. Is this a joke?" someone asked. But it wasn't. The Drakari were not known for peace. They were a species of giant reptilian warriors, taller than any human with claws sharp enough to cut through steel. Their empire had destroyed 12 civilizations. They never gave warnings. They never made offers. They only attacked. And now, they were asking for peace. Earth's council met in secret. No outsiders were told. The military wanted to ignore the message. The politicians feared a trap. But some believed this could be humanity's only chance to avoid a war they couldn't win. They needed someone brave, someone smart, someone who didn't break under pressure. Her name was Captain Aisha Morgan. Captain Aisha stood in a quiet chamber on the moon. Her black diplomatic uniform hugged her lean frame. A long scar ran down her left arm, a reminder from the last war she had survived. A tall man in a navy blue coat stood beside her. He was Admiral Trent, head of the Human Diplomatic Defense Force. "You don't have to do this," he said. Aisha looked at the screen showing the message again. "If I don't go, they'll say humans are cowards. If I go, maybe we get peace or I die. Either way, it's better than waiting to be burned alive in our homes." The Admiral nodded slowly. "You'll have no weapons, no guards. Once you cross into their space, we can't protect you." Aisha smiled faintly. "That's fair, they're giving me the same offer." Her ship was small, just one room and a command seat. No weapons, only a high-security translator and communication link. Aisha stared at the stars as the ship jumped to hyperspace. Her fingers tapped the armrest lightly. The stars turned into lines. Her journey began. 4 days later, her ship slowed as it reached the edge of Drakari space. There, waiting in the dark, were 6 massive warships. Each was shaped like a serpent, long, black, covered in glowing red, lights and spikes. The lead ship sent a message. "Follow us. Deviate and you will be destroyed." Aisha's ship locked into automatic. The escort began. She passed by broken moons, shattered stations, and one human battleship, floating, lifeless, burned from the inside. The Drakari left it there as a warning. Still, Aisha said nothing. Her eyes stayed cold. The Dragon Throne world was unlike anything Aisha had seen. It was a giant planet of fire, mountains, and lava rivers. Tall black towers rose from the rocky surface like claws. Giant flying creatures circled the sky. The escort led her ship into a giant hangar carved into the side of a volcano. As the ramp lowered, heat hit her face like a wall. A group of tall, armored Drakari waited. One stepped forward. He wore golden armor and had deep red scales. His eyes glowed yellow. "I am Commander Skalvorn," he said. You are now a guest of the Drakari Dominion. If you lie, you die. If you run, you die. But if you speak truth, you may live. Aisha met his gaze without blinking. Then let's speak truth. They took her through giant stone halls, past warriors training with plasma swords and slaves cleaning the floors. Everywhere she went, the Drakari watched her. Some with curiosity, most with hate. Finally, she reached a great chamber, walls lined with glowing red crystal. At the center was a throne made of black bone, and on it sat the supreme warlord Vraxis. He was larger than any other Drakari, almost 3 meters tall, his wings folded, his tail still. His claws tapped on the throne's armrest as he stared at the human woman. "You are brave," said, voice like thunder. "Bravery is rare in your kind." Aisha stepped forward. "I came for peace." The warlord leaned forward. "Peace is a weak word, but perhaps it is time. Our enemies grow stronger. Our people are divided. Perhaps a new path is needed." Aisha nodded. "Then let's begin." But before the talks could start, an explosion rocked the room, alarms blared. Drakari guards rushed in. A voice shouted, "The human brought a bomb." Aisha raised her hands. "I have nothing. Search me." The guards grabbed her, scanned her, and found no weapon. Still, the warlord's eyes narrowed. "Someone does not want peace. Someone inside my court." He stood slowly. "Prove to me you are not weak, human. Survive. Then we will talk again." The guards pulled her away. In a cold stone room deep underground, Aisha sat alone. The door locked. No light. Just her thoughts. "They want me dead. But I'm not here to die. I'm here to win." Somewhere above her, dragons whispered in the dark, and Aisha knew the most dangerous peace mission in galactic history had truly begun. 3 weeks had passed since the Treaty of Fire and Stone was signed. Peace banners now flew across the capital of Drakaros Prime. The lava-lit skies were filled not with warships, but with transports carrying food, medicine, and engineers from both Drakari and human systems. But even peace can feel like war, especially for those who used to fight. Captain Aisha Morgan stood outside the new joint embassy, watching Drakari guards train alongside human marines. She had saved the treaty, but she felt no peace inside, because something didn't feel right, and her instincts were never wrong. Tirak had taken a new role, as a translator and aide between species. His knowledge of both human customs and Drakari politics made him valuable, but even he could feel the tension growing again. "I heard a rumor," he told Aisha one morning. "One of the human diplomats tried to bribe a Drakari noble." Aisha narrowed her eyes. "Who?" "No name yet, but it's spreading fast," she sighed. "That's how peace starts to crack. Not with bombs, with whispers." Inside the embassy, Ambassador Lillian Cho met with Warlord Vraxis. "I've seen your reports," she said. "Trade routes are running. Science teams are building joint labs. We're ahead of schedule." Vraxis didn't look pleased. "Something is wrong, Ambassador. Some of my own generals avoid my orders. They say I've become soft. Human." He said the last word like it was poison. Ambassador Cho folded her hands calmly. "They fear change. That's expected." "No," Vraxis growled. "They prepare for something." Later that night, Aisha received a private message, untraceable from an unknown source. Just one sentence. "The fire still burns beneath the stone." She stared at the words, then she stood up. "We need to go," she told Tirak. "Now." They traveled to the edge of the capital, a quiet industrial zone near the lava tunnels. The area was supposed to be empty, cleared for repairs, but Tirak spotted it first. Heat signatures, lots of them, hiding underground. "Looks like a barracks," he said. "Hidden. Unauthorized. Drakari only." Aisha activated her recording lens. "Let's find out what they're planning." They slipped into the tunnels. What they found shocked them. Weapons, armor, maps marked with strike zones. not just on Dracaros, but on human colonies. A secret army. Loyal to the old way. Loyal to Karzan's ashes. Aisha stared at the map. They're not just planning to destroy peace. They're preparing for a new war. Back at the palace, Vraxis reviewed the footage Aisha had captured. His claws gripped the chair tightly. I knew some still dreamed of fire, he growled. But this is treason. Cho leaned forward. What will you do? Vraxis looked at Aisha. The humans cannot be involved in this directly. If they are seen attacking Drakari on Dracaro, even now it could collapse everything. Then let me go alone, Aisha said quietly. Vraxis stared at her. You'd walk into a hidden base of traitors by yourself? I've done worse, she said with a faint smile. Hours later, under moonlight and ash clouds, Aisha infiltrated the enemy base again, this time with weapons. She wore a stealth suit modified with Drakari plating, and carried a pulse pistol and fire blade. She moved through the shadows like a ghost. She planted charges on the ammo crates, photographed all the orders, but just before she could leave, a tail whipped around her ankle. She fell hard. A torch flared. A massive Drakari, easily 7 feet tall, stepped into the light. His body was burned, his scales red and black. His eyes were full of hate. You, he snarled. The human who tricked us. Aisha stood slowly. No tricks, just the truth. You lost. He laughed. We're still here, and peace will burn. They fought. Hard. He was strong. She was faster. He crushed a wall. She rolled under him, slicing low. They clashed. Sparks flying in the dark. She threw her last charge. It stuck to the fuel tank. She shot it. Boom! The explosion rocked the chamber. The traitor flew back, stunned. Aisha limped away as flames roared behind her. Outside, she sent the signal. Target destroyed. War averted. But more may come. The next day, news of the traitor base spread across Dracaros. Vraxis made a public statement. There are still those who wish to burn the future, but they will not win. Peace is strength, and our bond with humanity will not break. Some cheered, others whispered, but the message was clear. No more shadows. Later, Tirak asked Aisha, "Do you think it's over now?" She shook her head. Peace is a war we fight every day. Not with guns, with choices. She looked out at the twin suns rising. And we just have to keep choosing the right ones. Dracaros Prime stood still. The skies were silent. The lava rivers flowed quietly. From the tallest spires to the lowest tunnels, every eye was turned toward the Grand Circle, the heart of the capital. A human had died. Captain Aisha Morgan, or so the galaxy believed. 2 days earlier, she had vanished during a mission in the Ember Spires, ancient towers where old Drakari weapons had once been buried. She went in alone to stop the last warlord loyalists. An ambush waited. Explosives collapsed the tower behind her. The body was never found, but her armor was, and her blood. Tirak couldn't breathe when he heard the news. He dropped the tea he was carrying. It shattered like his heart. No, he said. She can't be gone, not her. But the report was confirmed. Even Vraxis stood in silence. His eyes, once fierce, looked old. She saved us, he said softly. Now we must honor her. And so, they did. For the first time in Drakari history, the Grand Roar, a sacred funeral reserved only for Dragon Kings, was held for a non-Drakari, for a human. Crowds of thousands gathered in the firelit plaza. Red smoke filled the sky. Giant horns sounded. Lava bloomed in the air like golden flowers. At the center of the circle stood a carved stone, shaped like a spear, her favorite weapon. On. It 3 words were etched in both languages. Aisha Morgan, peace warrior. Tirak spoke first. His voice shook. She taught me not to fear fire, but to walk through it. She didn't just fight for peace, she lived it. even when everyone doubted her. Then Ambassador Cho spoke. She was more than a soldier. She was the bridge between worlds. Then Vraxis stepped forward. He did not shout. He whispered. She reminded us who we were and who we could be. He placed his war claw upon the stone. Then the entire crowd, Drakari, human, young, old, lifted their voices. And they roared. One long, deep, powerful sound. It shook the stone walls. It echoed through the volcano valleys. It carried across the stars. For the first time in all of history, dragons roared for a human. But in the outer edges of the planet, something stirred. A Drakari scout ship landed near the Ember Spires. An emergency beacon had activated, a signal buried in ancient lava rock. Inside a collapsed tunnel, covered in ash and blood, barely breathing, Aisha Morgan was alive. They pulled her from the rubble. Bones cracked, armor torn, a piece of steel still in her leg, but her heart was beating. Barely. When she opened her eyes in the med bay 3 days later, Tirak was sitting beside her, crying and smiling at the same time. "You idiot," he said. "You missed your own funeral." She smiled weakly. "Was it nice?" The dragons roared. "Cool." A week later she walked, slowly, into the grand circle again. The crowd gasped, whispers turned into cheers. And then, the dragons roared again, not in mourning, this time, in celebration. Vraxis stood at her side. "You died and came back. Some might call you a god now," she chuckled. "I'd settle for a chair and some pain meds." Tirak raised a mug of fire tea. To the human who didn't know how to stay dead. Peace didn't come easy. Even after everything, there were still problems. Small attacks, angry speeches, tense negotiations. But every time things got dark, they remembered one thing. One human walked into the dragon's lair and left it changed, forever. 10 years later, a young Drakari and a human child sat in a classroom in orbit above Drakaros. They watched a holoscreen play old footage, a woman in simple armor, standing beside a dragon-like warlord, crowds roaring. Flags of both worlds behind them. The teacher spoke softly. This was the beginning of the United Flame Accord. The day humanity and the Drakari became allies. Not just in politics, but in soul. The child raised a hand. "Who was she?" The teacher smiled. "Her name was Aisha Morgan. She didn't bring peace with Shippen, but with courage. She was the first to walk through fire and not burn." Captain Aisha Morgan sat in the high tower of the palace, staring out across the burning skyline of Drakaros Prime. Lava rivers flowed like veins beneath the city. Black spires reached into the smoky sky. Below, workers were clearing rubble from the ruined council chamber. Guards patrolled in tighter formations, and in the city streets rumors were spreading. The warlord had survived an assassination. A human had saved him. And now, the dragons were signing a peace treaty. Inside the council room, preparations were underway for the historic Treaty of Fire and Stone. Representatives from Earth's United Human Systems would arrive in 2 days. A delegation of scientists, diplomats, and a few military officers. But there was a problem. Someone was still trying to stop the treaty. From the shadows, Vraxis paced in his private chamber, his expression grim. "They've gone silent," he told Aisha. "3 of my messengers disappeared on their way to the eastern fortress." "Karzan's followers?" Aisha asked. Vraxis nodded. "Yes, the red scales have melted into the dark places. We crushed their leaders, but not their fire." Aisha folded her arms. "They'll strike again, probably during the treaty signing." Vraxis looked her in the eye. "Then we must find the last spark before it becomes a blaze." Meanwhile, Tirak was following his own lead. He had grown since the arena fight. Not just in courage, but in purpose. Now he was spying on nobles who once called him weak. In the northern tunnels, under an old temple, he found something strange. A secret chamber filled with weapons, explosives, and stolen council robes. Worse, he overheard a voice. "We strike during the treaty." The human dies first, then the warlord. Tirak ran. That night, Aisha met Tirak in a hidden garden above the palace walls. He handed her a stolen data crystal. Everything's in there: locations, names, plans. She checked the file. It was worse than they thought. The traitors planned to disguise themselves as peace delegates. During the treaty signing, they would attack Earth's diplomats and blame Aisha. A false flag. If it worked, war would erupt again, instantly. She closed her eyes and sighed. They're not just trying to stop peace. They're trying to make humanity the enemy. The next morning, Aisha met with Vraxis and the elite guard commanders. We need a trap, she said. Let them think their plan is working. We control the room. We control the doors. And we stop them all before a single shot is fired. One of the guards, a young officer named Lair, looked nervous. What if they attack early? What if we fail? Aisha looked at him calmly. Then they burn everything, including you. Silence. Then Lair nodded. We won't fail. 2 days later, the treaty day arrived. The human delegation landed in a sleek silver vessel, its surface gleaming under Dracaros's harsh sky. A small crowd watched in silence as diplomats walked out, flanked by honor guards. At their center was Ambassador Lillian Cho, a stern but wise woman. She smiled politely at the warlord. A pleasure to finally meet you in peace, Warlord Vraxis. Vraxis bowed. Let's hope we stay that way. Aisha stood behind them, eyes scanning the crowd. She wore simple armor again, just in case. Inside the new council hall, the stage was set. Drakari and human banners hung from the walls. Guards in gold armor lined the edges. Cameras hovered above, ready to broadcast the historic moment to the galaxy. The council took their seats. The human diplomats stepped forward, and the traitors were already among them, dressed as guards, as aides, even as diplomats, waiting, watching, planning to strike at the perfect moment. Aisha gave the signal. Tirak, hidden in the control room, activated the seal protocol. Boom. All doors locked. Shields activated around the stage. The traitors moved fast, drawing weapons, but the real guards moved faster. Elite units sprang from behind false walls. Plasma nets launched. Flash grenades blinded the attackers. A brief firefight erupted. Sharp, deadly. One assassin aimed at Ambassador Cho, but Aisha leapt across the floor, tackling her out of the way. The bolt struck the floor inches from where Cho had stood. Aisha rolled and threw a stun disc. The assassin fell instantly. Seconds later, it was over. Silence. Then Vraxis rose. Those who try to destroy peace shall not find mercy, he said loudly, so all could hear. He turned to the shocked crowd and the recording drones. But today, thanks to one human, we still stand. Together. He looked at Aisha. Captain Morgan, you've saved 2 species. She stood slowly. Not yet. Let's sign the paper first. An hour later, on live broadcast across both worlds, Vraxis and Ambassador Cho signed the Treaty of Fire and Stone, 2 handprints, 1 claw, 1 palm, stamped together on a crystal page. That night, Aisha stood at the balcony of the Great Tower again. Tirak joined her, holding 2 mugs of fire tea. We did it, he said softly. She sipped and smiled. We started it. Peace is never easy. But now, we have a chance. He looked at her. What now? She stared out into the stars. Now, we find out what peace really means. Captain Aisha Morgan sat in the dark cell. The walls were hot like an oven. Sweat dripped from her forehead. The air smelled of ash and blood. Somewhere far above, she could still hear the roar of a volcano. She hadn't eaten in a day. No one spoke. Then, the heavy stone door creaked open. 3 Drakari guards stepped in. One of them held a collar made of black metal. Aisha didn't move. Stand, one hissed. She stood slowly. The collar was snapped around her neck. It locked with a sharp click. "What's that for?" she asked. "Control," the guard replied coldly. "Try to run and it will break your spine." Aisha said nothing. She just walked forward, calm. They brought her out into a massive courtyard. It was surrounded by walls of glowing rock and carvings of ancient Drakari warriors. In the center, dozens of nobles sat on thrones made of crystal, bone, or molten steel. The High Council of the Drakari. The Supreme Warlord Vraxus sat in the highest throne, wings spread wide behind him. His scales shimmered like fire. He raised a claw and spoke. "This human claims to bring peace. But yesterday, our walls were attacked. Someone wants her dead, perhaps it is one of us." Whispers echoed through the chamber. Some nobles stared at Aisha with hate. Others looked with curiosity. Vraxus pointed at her. "Before we talk peace, she must face our ancient trial. She will enter the chamber of silence." Alone, gasps filled the court. A tall female Drakari noble stood. Her armor was black with silver lines. "Even Drakari fear that place," she said. "She will die." Vraxus growled. "If she dies, she was too weak for peace. If she survives, we listen." Aisha's heart beat faster, but her face stayed calm. "I accept," she said. The guards led her into a dark tunnel deep under the volcano palace. The walls grew hotter with each step. Finally, they reached a thick stone door covered in glowing red runes. One guard handed her a small crystal torch. "You have 1 hour," he said. "If you are not out by then, you never come out." The door slammed shut behind her. Inside, it was silent. Dead silent. Not even the sound of her own breathing echoed. The torch flickered, casting shadows. On the walls, strange symbols glowed on the floor. As she walked, the silence started to press against her brain. Her thoughts became louder. Doubts whispered. "You'll never make it out. This is a trap. They just want a reason to kill you." Her breathing grew fast. The heat was rising. Her skin itched. The symbols on the wall started to move, slowly, like snakes. Suddenly, she saw something in the torchlight. A human body, curled in a corner. Dry. Burnt. She knelt down. The face was gone, but the uniform was clear. It was another Terran diplomat, one who had vanished 10 years ago. "They've tried this before," she whispered. "They've killed before." But then, her torch went out. Pitch black. In total darkness, the silence became a monster. She couldn't see her hands, couldn't hear her steps. She moved forward, one step at a time, hands on the wall. Then she felt heat on her back. She turned. A glow lit the chamber behind her. Not fire, but a red floating eye. A voice entered her mind. Deep. Slow. "Why do you seek peace with monsters?" Aisha stood straight. "Because war with monsters makes monsters of us all." The eye pulsed. "You do not fear death?" "I fear dying for nothing. Would you kill for peace?" Aisha was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "If it saves millions." "Yes." The silence returned. Then the eye vanished. A moment later, the stone door creaked open. She walked back into the courtroom. The nobles were shocked. A few stood. One even bowed slightly. Supreme Warlord Vraxus grinned, sharp teeth shining. "You are the first outsider to walk out of that place alive." Aisha stepped forward. "Then let's talk." She was taken to a guest room inside the palace. It was simple, hot, and guarded, but not a prison. Food was placed on the table, meat of some kind, hot drink, and red fruit. She sat and began to eat. A small figure entered silently. A young Drakari servant, maybe no older than a human teenager. He placed a folded cloth beside her and bowed. "Peace to your flame," he whispered in the Drakari tongue. Aisha looked at him. "You're not afraid of me?" He smiled weakly. "You're not the monster they said you were." Then he was gone. She unfolded the cloth. Inside was a small metal chip, A data shard. Written on it, "You are being watched. Do not trust the council." Later that night, in the highest tower of the palace, a cloaked Drakari noble stood by a window. A red scar ran across his face. His eyes burned with hate. He whispered to himself, "Let them think peace is possible. Let the human believe she is safe. Soon, she will bleed." Behind him, a shadow moved, and far below, Captain Aisha looked out at the lava fields and glowing skies. She knew this was just the beginning. The dragons had opened their doors, but not their hearts. And someone inside that palace wanted her dead before she could ever speak another word. Captain Aisha Morgan could feel eyes on her, not just from guards, not just from the curious Drakari nobles, but hidden ones, silent, careful, and watching her every step. She had survived the chamber of silence. That earned her some respect. But it also made her a target. Someone powerful didn't want peace. Someone wanted her dead. The next morning, Aisha was taken to the Hall of Words, the Drakari Council's meeting place. It was a large, open chamber with a burning river flowing under a glass floor. The walls were covered in murals of Drakari wars and victories. 12 nobles sat in a half-circle. All wore armor, each showing their clan symbols. They did not sit as friends. They sat like enemies forced to be in the same room. Supreme Warlord. Vraxus sat at the head of the hall, claws resting on the stone table. He spoke first. "Human, speak." Aisha stepped forward. Her translator chip buzzed softly in her ear as she began. "I did not come here to ask for mercy. I came because war between us will destroy both our kinds. The galaxy is changing. Other powers grow. We can't survive alone. But together we can." The nobles whispered among themselves. One noble, a tall male with dark green scales and cold yellow eyes, stood up. "I am Lord Karzan of the Bloodclaw clan," he said, "and I say humans are liars, weak. They hide behind machines and diplomacy. Drakari take what we want." Aisha met his gaze. "Maybe that's why your empire is shrinking." Gasps echoed. Even Vraxus narrowed his eyes. But Karzan just growled. "You have a sharp tongue. Let's see how long you keep it." He sat down. Vraxus raised a claw. "Enough. This is not a war room. Yet." The meeting ended shortly after. No decisions were made. But Aisha felt the tension rising. Too fast. Something was wrong. That night, Aisha returned to her room. She opened the drawer beside her bed. It looked untouched, but she had placed a thin strand of hair across it earlier. Now it was gone. Someone had searched her room. Her food tray was still warm. A glass of dark purple juice sat beside the plate. She didn't touch it. Instead, she picked up the plate and quietly poured the drink into a hidden container inside her boot. The next morning, Aisha went to the medical lab inside the palace. She had asked for access to a lab to study Drakari medicine. It was an excuse. She poured the drink into a scanner. A red warning flashed. Poison detected. Highly toxic. Draconium level 6. She stared at the screen. They had tried to kill her, again. But, this time not in public, quietly, secretly. That meant someone was afraid she might succeed. Later that day, the young servant from before returned. He brought her food again. Aisha watched him closely. "What's your name?" she asked. He looked around, nervous. "Tirak," he whispered. "Tirak," she said, calmly. "Someone is trying to poison me. Do you know who has access to my food?" Tirak's hands shook slightly. He looked around again, then leaned close. I shouldn't talk. But I hear things. In the kitchens. The red scales. They want you gone. They say peace is poison." Aisha nodded slowly. "Red scales?" Tirak nodded. "Secret group. Old warriors. They hate outsiders, even some of our own kind. They want war forever." Before she could ask more, Tirak quickly left. That night, Aisha sat in her room, thinking hard. The red scales. A secret faction. That explained the poison, the spying, the explosion on her first day. She needed proof. Real proof. If she went to the warlord with only words, they would laugh at her. She needed to catch one of them in the act. The next day, she asked to visit the palace library, an ancient archive of Drakari records and war history. Vraxis allowed it. 2 guards followed her, silent, watching. Inside the library, thousands of crystal tablets floated in the air. Lights moved between them like glowing insects. The air was cool and quiet. She walked to the war record section and began reading. Not about war, but about supply shipments, transport logs, black market trades, movement of weapons. After hours of searching, she found something strange. A shipment of plasma rifles had gone missing 3 weeks ago. But the same rifles were reported in use during an illegal arena fight on a nearby moon. The shipment had left from the palace itself. And the person who signed it? Lord Karzan. She smiled. Now she had a name and a crime. That night she wrote a short message in the Drakari language and handed it to Tirak. Deliver this to the warlord, alone. Trust no one. He nodded and slipped away. At sunrise, Aisha was summoned again to the Hall of Words, but this time Karzan was already there, standing near the throne, speaking loudly. She is a threat. A spy. She searches our records like a thief. We must end this now. Vraxis raised a claw. Enough, Karzan. The human brings an accusation. You will answer. Aisha stepped forward and placed the crystal tablet on the table. This shows you moved stolen weapons against your laws while peace talks are happening. Gasps again. Some nobles stood. Others hissed. Karzan snarled. Lies! Vraxis stared at the crystal. This will be verified. He turned to Aisha. You have made enemies here, many, but you have also made us curious. He stood. The next step is not words. It is fire. He pointed at the arena below the palace. Tomorrow you will face the trial of wills. Survive it, and we will talk peace again. That night, Aisha looked at the empty stars, through her window. The red scales were real. Karzan was dangerous, and the warlord was testing her. Again. She whispered to herself. They want to see if a human can bleed and still stand. Fine. Let's show them. The fire was coming, and she would walk into it without fear. The palace felt strange, quiet, too quiet. Captain Aisha Morgan woke early. Her body still ached from the arena fight. Bandages wrapped her side, her arm still bruised. But pain didn't matter now. Something was coming, and it would not be quiet for long. Tirak appeared at her door before sunrise. He looked scared. They're moving weapons, he whispered. I saw crates hidden in the kitchen tunnels, plasma rifles, heavy blades, too many for just guards. Aisha narrowed her eyes. Where are they taking them? I think the council hall. She stood at once. The coup is today. By mid-morning, the Drakari nobles gathered in the Hall of Words for the vote on peace. The hall was brighter today, lit with blue fire from the ceiling. The lava below bubbled softly. Aisha entered with Warlord Vraxis, walking just behind him. All eyes turned to her, some with respect, others with hate. Karzan sat near the center, silent but smiling faintly. Vraxis raised his voice. We meet today for the greatest vote in our history, to decide if the Drakari walk forward, toward peace and or backward, into endless war. A deep silence followed. Then, the votes began. One by one, the nobles stood, 3 for peace, 2 against. 1 abstained, and then it was Karzan's turn. He rose slowly. I vote. Against this lie. Against weakness. Against humans. He looked directly at Aisha. I vote for strength. Then he stepped back. More votes followed. The council was split. Vraxis stood. As warlord, I cast the final vote, but before he could speak, the walls exploded. Smoke, fire, screams. From the side doors, red-scale warriors rushed in, armed with rifles and axes. The attack had begun. Karzan drew his blade and shouted, "The warlord is weak. The age of fire begins." Again, some guards turned on the council. Others protected the warlord. Aisha grabbed the fallen spear of a dead guard and pulled Vraxis behind the central pillar. "They were ready," she said through clenched teeth. Vraxis growled, wounded but standing. "So are we." He handed her a dagger. "Stay alive, or this was all for nothing." In the chaos, Tirak moved through smoke-filled halls. He had one job: deliver the warning to the palace security center. He ran through a hidden tunnel, clutching a data chip from Aisha, showing Karzan's betrayal. Behind him, 2 red scales followed. He dove into a side door, breathing hard. "Guards, coup! Show this to Commander Vec." They stared at the chip. One guard raised his rifle, then lowered it. "Go," he said. "We'll hold them off." Tirak ran again. Back in the council chamber, the fight raged. Aisha fought like a storm. Fast, precise, clever. She used the environment, pushing one enemy into the lava pit, ducking under a falling beam to trap another. Vraxis fought beside, her claws soaked in blood. But the attackers kept coming. Karzan approached with 2 elite guards. "Enter," he said coldly. Aisha backed up near the lava edge. Her breath was heavy, her spear cracked. She faced the 2 elites. Tall, armored, deadly. One rushed first. She dodged, rolled, grabbed his leg, and pulled. He fell, but slashed her arm as he dropped. The second came from behind. She turned just in time, caught the blade with her broken spear, and slammed the dagger into his side. Both fell. She dropped to her knees, bleeding. Karzan stepped forward. "You fought well, human, but this is the end." He raised his sword, ready to strike. Then, a loud blast echoed. A massive door burst open. Reinforcements. Drakari soldiers in silver armor stormed in. The palace guards had switched sides, and they came for Karzan. Tirak ran in behind them, waving a security badge. "Stop him! He tried to kill the council!" Karzan roared in anger. "Traitors!" He tried to run, but Vraxis tackled him. They rolled across the floor, claws and steel clashing. Finally, Vraxis pinned him down and placed a blade against his throat. "It ends now," Karzan spat. "You are weak." Vraxis didn't smile. "No, I changed." With one swift motion, Karzan was knocked unconscious. The hall went quiet. The fires dimmed. Smoke drifted upward like ghosts. Aisha leaned against a broken pillar, her armor torn, her skin bloody. But she smiled. "It's over," she whispered. Later, Aisha stood before the remaining council. Many were wounded. Some had died, but they had survived. Vraxis stood beside her. "The red scales are broken. The traitors will be hunted," he said. "And now, the real vote." He looked to the council, and one by one, they voted. This time, a clear majority voted for peace. The warlord turned to Aisha. "You did what no one else could." She shook her head. "I only showed you a different path. You chose to walk it." Outside, the lava flows glowed brighter than before. As if the planet itself knew something had changed. Peace wasn't certain. It never was. But for the first time in Drakari history, it was possible. And it began with one human who walked into the dragon's lair and refused to run.